Welcome back, y'all. 2 videos in one day. I know that's crazy. 1 1/4 even. This is just me reading the important parts of the indictment. It's not going to be much editing or anything. This is for all the people that just want to be caught up with the charges, but don't have the time to either look themselves, or they're at work, or they're driving home. I got you. I'm not a lawyer, by the way. Okay, let's get into it. For decades, Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka P. Diddy, aka Diddy, aka PD, aka Love. That's the last time I'm using all those names, by the way, just letting you know now. The defendant abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. To do so, Combs relied on the employees, resources, and the influence of the multifaceted business empire that he led and controlled, creating a criminal enterprise whose members and associates attempted to engage in, among other crimes, sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, robbery, and obstruction of justice. Sean Combs, the defendant, operated his business headquartered at various times in Manhattan and Los Angeles under the variety of United States-based corporate entities, including Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, collectively the Combs Business. Corporate entities and Combs Business included, among other things, record labels and a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcohol spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, Diddy, the defendant, engaged in a persistent, pervasive pattern of abuse toward women and other individuals. This abuse was at times verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual. As a part of his pattern of abuse, Combs manipulated women to participate in highly orchestrated performances of sexual activity with male commercial sex workers. At times, Combs and others at his direction made arrangements for women and commercial sex workers to fly to Combs' location. Combs ensured participation from the women by, among other things, obtaining and distributing narcotics to them, controlling their careers, leveraging his financial support, and threatening to cut them off the same, and using intimidation and violence. Physical abuse by Sean Combs, Diddy, the defendant, was recurrent and widely known. On numerous occasions from at least in or about 2009, continuing for years, Combs assaulted women by, among other things, striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects, and kicking them. These assaults were at times witnessed by others and included one instance at a Los Angeles hotel in or about March 2016, which was captured on video, later publicly reported, where Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a woman as she was attempting to leave. When a member of the hotel security intervened, Combs attempted to bribe the staff member to ensure silence. Combs' violence was not limited to these women. It's extended to his employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others. Sean Combs, Diddy, the defendant, used the Combs business, including certain employees, to carry out, facilitate, and cover up his abuse and commercial sex. Those employees, including staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, and other close associates, acted as Combs' intermediaries. And their conduct was facilitated and assisted by Combs' control of the Combs business. Here they're going into the Combs Enterprise, which is how this case turned into a RICO. They have to be part of a group, and they have to do things in the furtherance of that gang or enterprise organization. It reads, from at least in or about 2008, though on about the date of the filing of this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, and others known and unknown were members and associates of a criminal organization, in parentheses, the Combs Enterprise or the Enterprise. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise engaged in and attempted to engage in, among other activities, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for purposes of prostitution, coercion, enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics offenses, kidnapping, arson, robbery, and obstruction of justice. The Combs Enterprise, including its leadership, its members, and its associates, constitute an enterprise as defined by Title 18 United States Code, Section 1961, that is, group of individuals associated, in fact, although not a legal entity. The Combs Enterprise consisted of Sean Combs, the defendant, entities within the Combs business, included but not limited to Bad Boy Entertainment, Combs Enterprises, and Combs Global, individuals employed by and associated with the Combs business, and others known and unknown. The Combs Enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose of achieving the objectives of the Combs Enterprise. The Combs Enterprise was engaged in, and its activities affected interstate and foreign commerce. The Combs Enterprise operated in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere. At all times relevant to this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, was the leader of the Combs Enterprise. Sean Combs, the defendant, I'm probably going to stop reading that part too. And others known and unknown participated in unlawful and other activities related to the conduct of the Combs Enterprise's affairs. These individuals include certain Combs business employees, such as members of the Combs security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and high-ranking supervisors, as well as other close associates of Combs. The purpose of the Combs enterprise include the following: operating a global business in the media, entertainment, and lifestyle industries, including, among other things, record labels, a recording studio, an apparel line, an alcoholic spirits business, a marketing agency, and a television network and media company. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power, reputation, and brand of Sean Combs as a musician, entrepreneur, and figure in the entertainment industry. Enriching members and associates of the enterprise include its leader, Combs, and in particular, those who demonstrated loyalty to Combs and willingness to conceal his crimes. Preserving, protecting, promoting, and enhancing the power of Combs Enterprise includes the power of its leader, Combs, through violence, use of firearms, threats, and other violence. Threats of violence, coercion, and verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. Fulfilling the personal desires of Combs, particularly those related to Combs' sexual gratification, including through the exploitation of women and the use of commercial sex workers. Enabling Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise to engage in unlawful acts of violence, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, forced labor, interstate transportation for the purpose of prostitution, coercion, enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotics distribution, and other crimes, and concealing the commission of such acts. Securing loyalty from the members of the Combs Enterprise, including through acts of violence and threats. Protecting the Combs Enterprise and its members and associates, including Combs, from detection and prosecution by lawful enforcement authorities through acts of intimidation, manipulation, bribery, and threats of retaliation against individuals who witnessed the crimes committed by members and associates of the enterprise. Among the means and methods by which Sean Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise conducted and participated in the conduct of the affairs and Combs Enterprise includes the following. Combs and other members and associates of the Combs Enterprise wielded this power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs Enterprise to intimidate, threaten, lure female victims to Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers, and that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs Enterprise, and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across the state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to its victims, in part to keep them obedient. Sometimes unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from their physical exertion and drug use. Members and associates of the Combs Enterprise include high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and the Combs business employees facilitated the freak-offs. Among other things, booking hotels for the freak-offs, stocking the hotel in advance with freak-off supplies, including controlled substances, baby oil, lubricant, extra linens, and lighting, cleaning the hotel rooms after the freak-offs to try to mitigate the room damage, arranging for travel for the victims, commercial sex workers, and Combs to and from freak-offs, resupplying Combs with requested supplies, delivering large sums of cash to Combs to pay commercial sex workers, and scheduling the delivery of IV fluids. In or about March 2024, during searches of Combs' residence in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. Combs subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse to cause the victims to engage in freak-offs. Combs maintained control over his victims through, among other things, physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting and threatening to withhold financial support, and by other coercive means, including tracking their whereabouts, appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances. During and separate from freak-offs, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, and threw objects at and dragged victims, at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. Victims believed that they would not refuse Combs' demands without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions in the form of physical or emotional abuse. Combs also used the sensitive, embarrassing, and incriminating recordings that he made during freak-offs as a collateral to ensure the continued obedience and silence of the victims. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise, including Combs' security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Combs himself carried or brandished firearms to intimidate and threaten others, including victims of the witnesses to his abuse. In or about March 2024, during the search of Combs' residence in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, as well as a drum magazine. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise enabled Combs control over the victims by following his directions regarding financial payments to the victims, advancing or suppressing the victims' career opportunities, and acquiring the controlled substances Combs used to keep the victims compliant. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise at times witnessed Combs' violence towards the victims and other victims' injuries caused by Combs without intervening. Instead, members and associates of the Combs enterprise helped conceal the violence and abuse by, among other things, assisting Combs in monitoring and preventing victims from leaving locations such as hotels or Combs residences. These occasions included instances in which a victim was required to remain hiding, sometimes for several days at a time, to recover from injuries Combs inflicted without being publicly observed. Members and associates of the Combs enterprise also assisted Combs in locating and contacting victims who attempted to flee his abuse. When employees, witnesses to his abuse, and others threatened Combs' authority or reputation, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise engaged in acts of violence, threat of financial or reputational harm, and verbal abuse. These acts of violence included kidnapping and arson, in addition to, in multiple occasions, Combs threw both objects and people, as well as hit, dragged, choked, and shoved others. When Combs' authority or reputation was threatened by possibly a negative publicity or legal or law enforcement against him, including in or about late 2023, following the public of Combs' crimes, Combs and members and associates of the enterprise pressured witnesses and victims, including through attempted bribery, to stay silent and not report what they had experienced or knew to law enforcement. On phone calls, Combs and other members and associates of the enterprise, among other things, provided these victims and witnesses with false narratives of events in an effort to conceal Combs' crimes. Combs caused these calls to be recorded on at least 2 occasions. From in or about 2008 through on or about the date of the filing of this indictment in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Sean Combs, the defendant, and others known and unknown, being persons employed by and associated with the Combs enterprise described in paragraphs 6 through 12 of this indictment, an enterprise engaged in activities of which infected interstate and foreign commerce, knowingly combined, conspired, and confederated, and agreed together and with each other to violate the racketeering laws of the United States. Okay, these are the forfeiture allegations. Basically stuff that the government's about to take from him. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1 on this indictment, Sean Combs, the defendant, shall forfeit to the United States pursuant Title 18, United States Code Section 1963, any and all interests the defendant acquired or maintained in violation of previous codes. Any and all interests in securities of, claims against, and property of, contractual rights of any kind of affording a source of influence over the enterprise name described herein, which the defendant established, operated, controlled, conducted, and participated in the conduct of or in violation of any and all property constituting and derived from proceeds obtained directly and indirectly. Said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commissions of said offense. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of the indictment, the defendant shall forfeit any and all property, real and personal, involved in, used, or intended to be used to commit or facilitate the commission of said offense, and any and all property traceable to such property, any and all property, real and personal, constituting the derives from the proceeds obtained directly and indirectly as a result of said offense, including but not limited to a sum of money in the United States currency representing the amount of property involved in an offense and proceeds traceable to the commission of a crime. So basically, for all those counts, he's going to have to give up anything that they say was procured with the money that he made from that, or any objects that were used with the intention of being used for that. Substitute assets provision. If any of the above described forfeitable property as a result of any act or omission of the defendant, A, cannot be located upon the exercise of due diligence, B, has been transferred or sold or deposited with a third person, C, has been placed beyond the jurisdiction of the court, D, has substantially diminished in value, or E, has been commingled with other property which cannot be subdivided out without difficulty. It is intent on the United States to seek forfeiture of any properties of the defendant up to the value of the forfeitable property. Signed, Damian Williams, U.S. Attorney. What that ending pretty much means is if we can't find the shit that we think that you had for this, got from this, then we're just going to take your other shit. I hope that caught y'all up. Again, just reading this for most people. This isn't. Have a nice day.